Hi guys, so today we want to talk about Haccp. First and foremost, what is Haccp? Haccp stands for Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Points. The purpose of Haccp is to keep the food safe from biological, chemical and physical hazards. Next, what Haccp more focus on? Haccp focus on identifying, evaluate and controlling hazards. Other than that, why Haccp important in industries? Haccp help ensure the food safety by addressing potential hazards throughout the entire food production process.
Next, I will share with you guys about the key components or the 7 principles of Haccp system. The first one is conduct hazard analysis. Hazard analysis is conducted by Haccp team to identify the appropriate control measures for the list of hazards that has been obtained. The second principle is determine the critical control points. CCPs are steps that are needed in order to prevent or to remove the safety hazard that has been obtained to their acceptance level. Next, we have establish critical limit. Critical limits is used to distinguish between safe and unsafe operation conditions according to the CCPs. The next one is establish monitoring procedures. Monitoring procedures are conducted to assess whether CCPs are under controls by facilitating their tracking of operation and providing written documentation for the use in verification.
For the next steps, which is establish corrective actions, procedures must be in place to address any deviation from critical limits, with steps to correct the problem and prevent it from happening again. Next, establish verification procedures. This involves confirming the Haccp system is working as intended, including periodic reviews, audits, and checking records. Last but not least, establish record keeping and documentation procedures. Detailed records of all Haccp procedures and activities must be kept to show compliance with the principles and ensure accountability.
Now that we have an understanding of Haccp and its 7 principles, let's discuss the importance of Haccp for the food industry. One of the importance of Haccp is to prevent foodborne illnesses as well as ensures food safety. Haccp identifies potential biological, chemical, and physical hazards at every stage of food production, from procurement to distribution. By addressing these risks proactively, it minimizes the likelihood of foodborne illnesses and contamination incidents. Additionally, it emphasizes prevention instead of relying on post-production inspections, ensuring that potential hazards are managed before they can endanger consumers. This brings us to our second point, which is building consumer confidence. A robust Haccp system showcases a dedication to safety and quality, which is essential for preserving consumer trust in food brands and products. This is especially vital in competitive markets, where safety issues can tarnish reputation. There are 12 key steps to successfully implement Haccp. The first step is to establish a Haccp team. To ensure adherence to all Haccp guidelines, it is essential to form a dedicated team within your organization. This team should be multidisciplinary, comprising members from production, quality assurance, technical support, purchasing, and engineering. The second step is to describe the product. This involves describing the product or product category by considering its ingredient, packaging, safety critical factors, shelf life, and its chemical, physical, and microbiological properties, along with any other pertinent characteristic. The third step involves identifying the intended use of the product. This requires understanding how the end consumer is expected to utilize it, along with a clear grasp of the target audience, specific usage guidelines, and possible misuse scenarios. By clarifying the intended use, the Haccp team can more effectively evaluate risks and create strategies to address them. For example, if the product is designed for vulnerable groups such as infants or the elderly, stricter safety standards may be necessary. The fourth step is to construct a flow diagram of the process. This diagram visually represents each step of the production process, from the receipt of raw materials to the final product. It is crucial that the flow diagram is comprehensive and includes all stages of production, including storage to distribution. The fifth step involves verifying the flow diagram on site to confirm that it accurately represents the process and inputs. Each state of the operation should be observed, and any differences between the diagram and standard practices must be noted and corrected. The sixth step is conducting a hazard analysis. This step involves identifying and evaluating potential hazards that could affect the safety of the product at each stage of the production process. The Haccp team should consider biological, chemical, and physical hazard, as well as any condition that could lead to contamination or spoilage.
The next step of implementation of Haccp is determine the critical control points or CCPs. By determining the CCPs, physical, chemical, and biological hazards are eliminated after being identified. Different from control points or CPs, CCPs are associated with higher food safety risks that require specific control measures and critical limits compared with CP, which may have less stringent control requirements. CCPs will be controlled and monitored through the final Haccp plan. The next one is establish critical limit. Critical limit is a value that is used to control and limit the risk at CCPs. Each CCP usually will have more than one associated critical limits in order to ensure that identified hazards are prevented or eliminated to the acceptance level. The next one is monitoring CCPs. After the critical limits has been set up, the CCPs will be monitored to ensure that they do not exceed the limit. This monitoring should be able to trace the loss of controls at CCPs so that it can be taken back to the process before exceeding the limit. The next step is establish pre-planned corrective actions. Corrective actions are needed in Haccp plan system, especially when monitoring indicates deviation from critical limits at CCPs that show those CCPs are not under control. These corrective actions are important to avoid the foods that may be hazardous from reaching the consumers. The next step is establish procedures for verification. In order to determine whether the system is operating according to the plan, the verification procedures are needed. The verification procedures include the frequent reviews of Haccp plan and its records. Those documentation should confirm that the Haccp plan is functioning well. The last step is establish proper documentation and record keeping. After ensuring that all the Haccp processes are working well, the proper documentation and record keeping are needed so that the business can verify that controls are in place and being properly maintained.
In conclusion, HACCP is a vital system that ensures food safety by preventing contamination from production to consumption, maintaining high industry standards.